Welcome to Tentative Title with Tim. This is a podcast about creativity, about process, about filmmaking, and about screenwriting. Welcome everybody back to the podcast. I hope everybody out there is doing well. And let's get into today's topic. So today's topic comes from, well, once again, me thinking about things, which I do a lot of, probably more than I should, but this is the brain I have, and this is the way I deal with the world, so here we go. But, you know, I was thinking about the way in which you need a business to create an item, let's call it a widget, whatever, and you're doing it so that it will be useful for the general public, for them to get their stuff done, to start their own businesses. There's this inherent need usually in what is being created. Sometimes they're luxury items, and therefore, for people who want to relax or want to collect things, and that's all well and good. But it seems like no matter how much I think about the film business, it's one of the weirdest ones out there. Like, there is so much that is very specific to the way in which you should do business in any other field. Like, there are contracts, there are deadlines, there's you have to mobilize like big crews to get something done. Like, there's all these logistical things that apply to the rest of the world. But there's this other side where you're doing it in service of a movie or a show, or like you're making it for something that is completely made up, usually. And how you kind of have to invest not only like your brain power into making sure that the decisions you are making on a business side make sense, but that on a creative side, from your emotional side, from your I guess your the spirit side, the creative side, that you have to make something that gets you excited, that you think that will get other people excited as well. And so there's this kind of like, you have to be on both extremes to be in this job. And I don't see necessarily how other industries have to work in the same way. I mean, the people who design things are designing things that are beautiful, or hopefully are beautiful, but also are practical and can be used, and that, are not going to be just taking up space. But in the film industry, it's like you're making something to be disposed of on a continual basis. That's why we have over 100 years of film. Like, there are how many? I don't even know if we reached the point of billions of films, but we might have reached the point of billions of films that have been created over the lifespan of the creation of film itself into the 21st century, into 2021. I mean, that's insane. Like, nobody would be able to watch all of that. And of course, not everybody is supposed to watch all of that. There are genres, there are very specific films that people who have interest in certain things are going to gravitate towards, and those films are for those interests, those specific interests, obviously. But when it comes to being a creative, being somebody who not has to, but like, I want to create stuff for this industry. I grew up being entertained and enjoying a lot of the movies that came out of this industry. I've loved it since I was very young, and I was always fascinated by the behind the scenes and how movies were made, and the various relationships of like studios to creatives, and all those intricate business stories that seem to, be lore. Over, that are just there, in the ether, that are, constantly talked about. I loved all that. It was a very, I guess, sentimental or romanticized version of Hollywood that I wanted to be a part of. But, the reality of it was a completely different reality. I went to school. I wanted to learn how to make films properly, and then I got out into the real world. And of course, I learned a lot of things in school that I needed to know. That for me, school was the proper way to go about learning how to do film. I know there's still a debate, and there's always going to be a debate. Do you need film school or do you not need film school? And the answer that I've always come back to, that a lot of people have said, is it just depends. Are you somebody who needs the structure of film school, who needs to have have to answer to a teacher and to have opportunities to create things, to be critiqued, to learn skills, to learn the history of film? Or are you somebody who just hops on YouTube and says, yeah, I'm going to learn how to use such and such camera and this such and such lighting setup and do it, and do it that way? And both are legitimate. Like, you can do both, and it's completely fine. But going into this industry and learning, over the years, I've learned more and more about what goes on behind the scenes and how intricate the negotiation process can be, and why certain movies are successful and why they fail. And it's still fascinating, but it's also such a conflict between the movies and stories that I fell in love with and that I want to create, and what the business side is saying is the right thing to make. And the fact that both of those can be wrong at any one time. Like, something that on paper, on a spreadsheet, is supposed to be successful might fail because it came out at the wrong time, or, an audience wasn't interested, or, any number of factors can cause a film to fail. Then on the other hand, you can have a very creative film, but it ends up being so niche that only the fans of that filmmaker or only a small amount of people will actually be interested in it, even if it has some very deep truths in it, has some great characters, has it might just be one of the best films you've ever seen. But that doesn't matter because it's so artistic. It's so from a pure place of creativity that an audience who could care less about creativity and just wants to see just a good story, or to see action heroes or whatever, they're not going to care. And so there's this in between of okay, what is the proper thing to do as a business? What's going to make the most money? The ROI. Well, what is the return on investment on what it is we are creating? And how can that fit into the creative part of it? How can we still be creative and yet still be profitable? And that's a fine line to walk. And, like I said, something that looks good on paper, both if it's a creative if it's a spreadsheet or if it's just a script, both of them could say, yes, this is going to be successful. This is good. This is defined as a good movie, a blockbuster, a movie that's going to have legs. Might just fall apart. It might flop. It might just do nothing when you finally release it. And it's not to say that I have a firm belief in movies having a second life. We saw that over the pandemic, that since movie theaters didn't have anything to play, they were playing old movies. And I think like Halloween was like at the top of the box office at one point in 2020, like the original Halloween, the one from like 1970 something or other. I forget the date, but that's insane. I mean, I think it's a good movie, and I know it's a classic among a lot of people, but who knew that it was going to like be the box office, number one ever. And so it's impossible to tell. But that's what's so fascinating about this juggle between like about the business side of like, okay, we're going to put as many factors as we can into this property that we know are successful because we've done the research, we have other movies that are exactly like it, or close to it, or in the same genre. Like the metrics say this. And then on the creative side, it's like, okay, well, I've incorporated these things that are supposed to be successful or have been successful in the past. Now, one should lead to the other, right? Like the business side informing the creative should lead to a successful movie, or a creative movie should lead to a successful business campaign, or like it should count as good business. So it's a very weird business. I keep saying the word business, but it's so weird. It's such like I'm always surprised at it. There's things that happen where a movie that wasn't supposed to be successful ends up being a sleeper hit, and a movie that had all of the criteria. It had name stars. It was set in a maybe it was a sequel, or maybe it was like it seemed like it had everything going for it. Like the screenwriter was an Oscar winner or whatever. The director, like all these Oscar winners are on the crew, and it's like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Like this should bring in people. Like people should be excited about this, and it does nothing, and people would rather see something else, or maybe they weren't ready for what this film was trying to do. So do you guys feel that way? Do you guys see that? Like I'm talking to creative people, I'm talking to business people. Like, do you feel like there's kind of like this disconnect where it's like you're creating something and you're like, well, I like it, but it's not, I don't know if it's good for business. And then on the other side, maybe you're like trying to be creative, and you're looking at what has been successful from a business side, and you're like, well, if I can just put these elements into what I'm trying to create, then that should equal success, right? But as we know, that's hardly the case, which is exciting because it means like when you sit down to make something, you don't know how the audience is going to react to it. You don't know who's going to find it, or who's going to try to get other people to see it. Like you don't know how much excitement a project is going to bring once it's out in the world. Like and that's exciting, but it can be scary because you're putting so much money into it. There's thousands upon thousands, if not millions of dollars being put into these films, and you want to get your money back. Like you want to get your money back plus more, and that's a sound business choice. But more often than not, movies don't make their money back, and that was another eye opener that I just didn't expect. Like I thought that if there was a big box office, you got your money back, and I thought, well, even if you're a smaller movie, you're still making money, right? Like that's the way it's supposed to be. You made the thing, you promoted the thing, now people are paying to see the thing, right? That's how it's supposed to work. That's the clear line of production. You come up with the idea. You develop the idea, you make the film, you put it together in post-production, you release it out into the world, and then people pay for it. And then that money comes back to you, and you get to make another one, right? Or you retire because you're, a billionaire because the movie was like such a big hit. If only. No, that will probably never, ever, 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 ever happen. So my idea about getting rich off of like a film that I make is that's not a delusion that I'm prepared to entertain, because I know I'm just going to be disappointed. Like I'm just not expecting it. What I am expecting is that I want to make another film or a series or whatever. Like, I want to continue to have a creative life, but a creative life that allows me to still have some income, be able to, support my family a little bit, just to be able to keep going, to still live in this creative cycle. And that's what I'm learning right now. I'm learning what it means to work on the business side of my creative life. And it's something, it's what I've been fighting, I think, for a long time, because to apply business to anything means that you were killing something. And I always thought that if you apply business to something creative, you're automatically saying, well, the idea of creating something cool is out the window, because now you're just creating stuff that is going to be mediocre because you think that that's going to sell. And, I still fall into that trap where I think, oh, well, from a business perspective, this makes sense. It's not exciting. It's not creative. It's not innovative. It's, it's what it's going to be. It's what's been selling. But then, I see stories of very weird films that have taken chances, and they, become big at the box office, like A Quiet Place. Like, that was taking a huge chance, and it was a good film, and they got rewarded for it, and it was an original idea. Now that's exciting. And Free Guy just came out on Friday, and I hope that film does well, because of the fact that it is an original idea. And the more that we can support original ideas, the more that Hollywood is going to look at that and say, wow, the audience really wants original ideas. Let's keep making more of this. Yeah. This is where the money is. Let's keep making this. The heck with sequels. The heck with reboots and remakes. Let's do original stuff once again. Let's start cranking up the spec script, mailbox, and start getting some original ideas back in here. That would be awesome. And it would, if it would make money, which I think it would. And I think it's just because Hollywood is kind of afraid of losing money because there's so much at stake. But man, if you just have an original idea that's executed well, that's going to make you money. And it's going to make you money not just in the opening weekend, but it's going to make you money throughout the entire life of the film. And we could be talking about 50 years, 100 years from now, where a film is still popular and still making money, and over time actually makes more money than the big, opener on Friday night. That just kind of fizzles after the second weekend. I gotta believe that's a part of me that is, excited about the future of filmmaking, and that there is a business side of it that makes sense, that also incorporates taking chances and creating interesting things. And that's the Hollywood I want to be a part of. That's the one that excites me. That is the Hollywood that I grew up watching, where they were taking chances, they were rewarded for it. I mean, maybe they weren't popular, the films weren't necessarily that popular when they came out, but you know what films we keep talking about today? Those films. we keep referencing those films. Everything you see today is trying to be the next whatever from 30 years ago. So, I don't know. That sounds like good business, even though at the time it may have seemed like it wasn't that great. Like, oh yeah, we're just cranking out films, whatever. With the exception of like Steven Spielberg and but still, it's just Anyway, I'm getting on a little bit of a rant because, I think that there's a middle ground here, and I've been trying to find it within myself. As a creative person who just wants to just throw paint at the wall and say, you know what, this is my art, like accept it. And then there's another part of me that's like, well, I want like millions of people to accept it. So I'm going to have to do something different, or I'm going to have to be more thoughtful about the paint I'm throwing against the wall, because I want people to buy this thing. I want people to have fun with this thing. I want people to, possibly like buy toys that are made because of it, or like buy the comic books or buy the novels, like to just buy things that are associated with the film. It's like that takes a lot more work, and it is possible, and it's still happening today. I see so many independent filmmakers who have that in mind, and they're like, yeah, I know that what I make off the film is going to be very little, but I'm building a community around the film, and I'm able to like create items from the film that people want to buy. And that's exciting. That's creating a fan base that is going to be there for the next thing that you're making. And that sounds like good business. That sounds like a built-in audience who wants to see the next thing. And that's exciting. And that I would love to build that. And it's going to take time. I know it may take another 10 years before I even see, this kind of like Hollywood, or this kind of career that I have in mind for myself. And I know that, and I'm going to have to be patient. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Once again, I hope you're doing well. This whole pandemic thing's still happening, so wherever you are in the world, like, please be safe. Do whatever you need to do to be safe, because I want you around. I want you to still, enjoy life and enjoy the things that are being created in this world, and to be a fan of stuff. So, all right, guys, until the next one. And also, if you want to connect with me, I have an email for the podcast. It's tentative.title.with.tim.podcast@gmail.com. Also, I have a Twitter account for the podcast where I post episodes, and that is @title_Tim. And you can find also on the Facebook page, I have a page for the podcast, so you can connect with me there. Looking forward to hearing from all of you, and until then, I'll catch you on the next one.